Hello to my new episode of Future Proof. Today we are talking about AI and I'm here with Fabio Strässle. Fabio, you are the Center of Excellence Leader AI at G+D Netcetera. Welcome to my show.
Good to be here.
So we're going to talk AI today. There's a lot of topics. What are we going to cover?
We're going to talk about Agentic AI, what it is and why trust is kind of the key element when it comes to agents.
And then we're also going to talk about the organizational readiness. How to become an organization that lives and breathes AI day in and day out.
Yeah, we're going to share some organizational insights also from our learning journey, because we're not done yet either, but we have some learnings to share already.
Cool. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too.
Hello again on my next future-proof episode today on AI, and I'm sitting here today with Fabio Strässle, our leader of our Center of Excellence AI at G+D Netcetera. Welcome, Fabio.
Good to be here, Carsten. Welcome.
So Center of Excellence AI, that means you oversee basically all the developments and pursuits we are having on AI in our company and with our clients. But let's start into our topic by talking about Agentic AI. This is in every newspapers now. What actually do we really mean when we say Agentic AI?
It's actually a good question because the meaning changed a bit. And we can also see this confusion a lot in conversations around this topic. For example, if you're using Microsoft Copilot, there's still the word agent in there for a specific feature. But in the end, what it is there and what it meant in the past was just an LLM prompted with some context and instructions.
An LLM is a large language model, we should say again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And nowadays, it's much more powerful than that. Now we're talking actually, an agent is actually an LLM with tools and agency. So it can actually do stuff in the software environments and actually change data, perform actions, and reason about what the best plan of action is. So it's not just simple input-output. There's actually more happening there.
Right. And that, of course, has potentially a lot of applications in the financial services industry.
Exactly.
Now, in order to use them, you have to trust these agents. How is that performed? Because I assume that many people may also not say, hey, I have this agent and will always give the right answer. It's not happening this way.
Yeah.
How do you organize this?
That's basically the limiting factor here, because often a misconception is that the technology is somehow not there yet, that the models are not powerful enough. But most often, if you look in practice, what is actually limiting the application of those agents is the trust in their ability and the setting up the systems in a way that you can work with them in that way. Like a good analogy is basically if you have this kind of banking assistant in your mobile banking app, what should it be allowed to do? Is it allowed to perform transactions on your behalf? Most people probably would say no. And a good analogy is really like, would you actually also give that access to a best friend of yours, for example? Would you give them your information, your bank account information? You don't do that today, right? So that's the question of trust. And trust is basically a function of what happens if the person does something that it shouldn't be doing, or what the agent does something that it shouldn't be doing. How big are the consequences? And how reliable is it in performing it? And how big is the benefit you get out of that work from the agent? I mean, we can think about how this looks in a business context, because sometimes employees have actually access to some type of company account or a credit card, and there's a scaffold around it. So they can use the credit card to perform their actions and do their jobs. But there's limits around how much they can use it for. There's card limits. There's probably some kind of overhead checking purpose. So there's a bill coming in and is paid. You're checking, is this actually okay? And you give your check mark on it. All of this is basically the scaffold, and you can think about agents the same way.
But this is also an emotional way of thinking about it, right? People act mostly emotionally, right?
Yeah.
So I guess this experience curve also needs to develop. It's not there from the beginning, especially when you look into the consumer realm, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, probably you can also look at yourself a bit. I don't know about you, but I know about me when I started to use these tools. At the beginning, I used them for basic stuff like summarizing an email, a document, and so on. And then it becomes more and more evolved. Like even before we started the podcast, I think you were using it in a very personal matter, actually, with building a spreadsheet for personal finances. And I think at the beginning, when you were using these tools, you probably wouldn't have done that. But
True.
Using them over time, you gain the trust because it performs correctly, it gets you the results, and it saves you time and provides value. And so you start to give it more responsibility. Same with a junior employee.
Great example. Now, when you think about AI agents in banking realm again, is there any way where you say this is what we still need to break in order to make it more usable in the banking arena? Is there still some level we need to climb over?
I mean, there's many obstacles kind of limiting us to use this technology and its full potential. So one aspect is certainly that regulatory environments need to catch up. And I mean, we all know the development in this space is super rapid, and the regulatory frameworks are usually not as fast to catch up, but they are very necessary to deploy those tools safely and in the interests of our customers, right? So that is certainly one aspect of it. Another aspect is the liability question, and it's of course related, but if an agent messes up, who is actually liable for it? And this is the big question regarding to this, right? So even for internal use, but with a customer even more, who is actually responsible for what the agent produces and does?
It's the same like in automotive, right? Self-driving cars. When there's an accident, who is ultimately responsible? Right?
Exactly.
And here's the same thing.
It's the same conversation. It's the same limiting factor. These cars are driving around in San Francisco, but not much more yet because these questions need to be answered.
Exactly. That brings me now to the second element of our conversation, the consumer perspective, right? Because consumers will likely use agents more and more over time, right? We are all used now to apps and web services. So what are the early and quick wins banks can use here on these topics with agents?
Yeah. I mean, on the consumer side, if you're really talking about customer facing, then it's what we already also in the introduction, right? What we shipped. It's really a low-key banking assistant that makes it easier for users to gain access to their information, to navigate the app. So it's simple things like, I want to know how much money I spent on groceries the last month. Like I used a feature from Neon yesterday just to try this out, right? They have a solution like that implemented. And it's an easy way to get customers accustomed to these solutions and also to provide some type of value. And also the other aspects, like we said, these apps are sometimes very complex to navigate, and just making it easy to find the right things, perform the right actions via a conversational interface that we all know. That's a very low-key entry point. Another point might also be customer-facing support. And there it's a bit a tricky situation because many banks, and also rightly so, want to have the human element in the support question. But I think that is also a part where AI can really facilitate also and improve the quality of your support by being much faster, providing answers that maybe don't even need like a human face in the loop, right? And you just have a much better customer service experience that you would otherwise not be able to provide.
So you mentioned one important word in your answer here, which is the word value. So is there a way with agents to define what is the perceived value for a consumer? How do you measure this?
I think the same way as you would measure any type of feature that you roll out in a way, right? So what is the actual usage of the feature? Like, for example, with the banking assistants, I'm really looking forward to long-term data on the usage of those tools, right? I can very well imagine that they might not be the crazy feature that customers will come to your bank for, right? But they might be providing other values for your business and your customer, like showing that you're very innovative as well, and might be the stepping stone for more involved and more valuable features for your customer. And I think the value comes back to the outcome, and that comes back to the trust. Because the agents, the outcomes they perform or achieve depend heavily on the ability they have and the tools available, right? But that requires trust, because more autonomy means also there's more room for error, and the errors might be greater, but the potential is also greater. So that's really these type of things that both users and banks have to figure out, also in conjunction with each other, right? So providing these features, providing the opportunity for users to use them, and really achieve the outcome that the users want. And if you're already close to your customer, you know already what the outcome that the users want to achieve is, and agents is just a tool to get you there faster.
Right. And we are moving here on quite a trajectory, because you mentioned a couple of use cases that are very simple, like what was my balance account a month ago, or what do I spend my money for? In the end, the promise is much higher. You can have your personalized advisor that knows your financial backgrounds, where you want to go with your money in the future, what you want to inherit, and so forth. So do you need the face-to-face, or will we have a complete replacement of this by Agentic advisor?
I mean, it's a bit of a crystal ball question, right? So above forecasts is always a bit difficult, but I think we can look also to other things in the past and also to the young generation in relation to that, right? So I was working in a fintech a couple of years back, and there it was aimed at the young generation. The whole idea of the app was only there to provide investment information to young people because they didn't trust the investment advisors from banks anymore. So they're not going to the bank advisors because they, like one flippant way of saying it is like, if they would know what they were doing, they would already be rich and not working at a bank. But basically, this aspect then, this just opens up for other solutions. So for example, complete AI solutions. And I think the vision you mapped out is exactly where it's going to go, right? Now, private banking is a service only reserved for the rich. Why? Because it's very expensive to perform. Like the custom kind of person responsible for your wealth and financial questions knows your context, your circumstances, knows you personally on a deep level, and can provide you with custom advice. This is basically what AI promises as well. If we go through some regulatory and psychological changes that would need to happen as well, right? You have to trust the agent with that information as well. But then it has really the ability to democratize private banking for everyone at a much cheaper price point.
Right. So you move from the 1% high net worth or ultra high net worth advisory services to a mass personalization of these services that everyone could potentially use, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That, however, gives then the follow-up question, what about mass manipulation then? Because here we don't know yet what we not know yet, right? So there's possibilities and people talk about it. Yeah,
of course. And that's always a danger with when it comes to data and people and algorithms, and also with AI. And I mean, regulation tries to put some brakes there and some monitoring there, but I think it's also deeply, you should never take the organizations and people out of that responsibility. I mean, you probably, like manipulation in the end is that you're taking information about a person to steer them in a direction that is not beneficial to them, but more beneficial to you. And I mean, most organizations probably, or most people could tell if they're doing manipulation or not. And so I think you can take the individual and the organization out of this responsibility to, they have the choice to not use these tools and technology for manipulation, but for the best interests of the user. And if we are honest, that's always long-term the best way to win as a business.
it is. However, it requires also regulation. And in physics, we used to say, who observes the observer, right? So here we have the agents, and who observes the agents? Another agent, or is it at some point a human being? Is it an organization? What is it, right?
Yeah.
So these are questions we need to ask ourselves. No?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And also it's like, oftentimes it's also not necessarily malicious intent, but just laziness, kind of taking the responsibility to someone else. So might be many reasons why you end up in manipulation, or not even because you wanted to, right? And that's why you need regulation, you need the scaffold that makes sure that this is not happening.
Right. So really exciting future in front of us, a lot of benefits that could be held by agentic AI in the future, and also on the consumer level, also risk as we discussed. Let me now take a turn to a different view, because in order to do all this and pursue all these opportunities, organizations need to get ready for it. We are looking at this at G+D Netcetera. Banks are looking at this as well. Do we have some first learnings? What is the maturity needed, and how to enhance maturity of organizations to be ready for AI?
I mean, we're in the middle of these questions as well. So I would say we have first initial learnings, but I think it's also important to frame that the goalposts of these topics are always moving, right? So this is rapidly developing. And many of the topics that we have now very much on the agenda, like agentic AI, for example, wasn't around 2 years ago. But keeping that in mind, we can already have some steps and some learnings that we can point to. So I think one is really trying to map out what maturity in this topic actually means, using AI internally to be more productive and more effective. What does that look like? And we did an external maturity assessment as well on this. And the first one is really, you're not using AI, of course, you're not doing anything in that part. The second level is the experimenter, which I think many companies are in, which is you're doing POCs, you're trying stuff out, you're using these technologies, you're trying to find good projects, but you're not really getting out of the proof of concept stage. Then you go into the practitioner stage, which is you're actually having implementations that provide value, that are in production internally, that you use to get more efficiency, but it's not broadly rolled out yet. And then you go into the professional stage, where you actually start to see a broad rollout of all these capabilities. And then lastly, and this is the aspirational part, is kind of the shaper role, which is a bit more ambiguous because not many are yet there. But there you actually use AI to support and enforce your key differentiation and actually use it for your business model and your USP, unique selling point. Netcetera itself was at the stage 3, so around the professional stage, which I personally think is, to be honest, a bit optimistic. We're actually in the middle, I would say, between 2 and 3. So we already have pockets of heavy and very advanced AI use, which is amazing and really great, and we see the value already. But we can't say it's broadly across the whole organization we rolled out yet. That is really a challenge, how to scale up and broadly roll out the benefits we see in those pockets of use and in these projects that were successful.
And would you say there are some learnings also for other companies?
You have to start. So that's the first thing. You don't have to have everything perfect, but you don't have to have complete perfect. The data is all there and all the connectors and everything is set up, the infrastructure. You don't have all the regulatory and security questions answered from the start. You better start. You try to identify where are use cases that provide high value, but are also not too complex. You don't want to start with maybe the most interesting and coolest case that has the biggest impact, but would take you like a year to do, especially if you don't have much experience, right? So you actually take those cases and you start to experiment and conduct some learnings, get some wins, because it's also a cultural topic, right? People need to be convinced that these technologies can provide value to them. So you start with that. You take in security and compliance from day one. You really try to answer those questions early, or at least start a discussion to get answers later when you need them. But then you go by it step by step, build these solutions, and you scale. And I think there also, it's important to differentiate as well. You don't have to do everything yourself. So you don't have to build all the toolings from ourselves. So for us, for example, it's also a risk. Historically, we are a software development company as well at its core. So we're doing a lot of our stuff. We like to do them from the ground up, which often is not necessary. You can use solutions and learnings from others to actually jumpstart that process as well.
Right. So really exciting. I think also this notion of I need my data fixed before I can start AI. You're saying forget about this, just get started, because some of these things will get fixed along the way. And another quote I read recently is that nobody actually knows everything about AI anyway, right? There is not somebody, not even the CEOs of the large tech companies know it. So we better get started and we get comfortable with also the insecurities in the way we're going to develop them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can see it every day. You open the newspaper or your Twitter feed or whatever, and you see tons of new news and information about this topic.
The other question is, how do you see the role of leadership in an organization to drive the change that is required for AI?
So I think there are two parts to it. One is really shaping the vision. And this is obviously difficult if the environment is moving, the technology is moving, but still directionally, I think you can map out a vision, what it likely will mean for us, and that this is a topic that should be on the agenda and should be put a focus on it, right? Because if leadership doesn't point to this topic as a top priority, it's very hard to move projects forward internally. It just won't happen because everybody's busy, always busy. And the second part, I think, which is also important, is the role model aspect. So leadership also needs to use those things themselves. I think that has a big signaling capability. If they are not using the technology, then everybody else also probably has more questions or is not confident enough to use it as well.
That's the reason why I get trained by you. We do reverse mentoring, right? Because I think, I speak for myself. I cannot claim I know everything about AI. How could I? But I know I have there are some other experts in the company that can spread their wisdom and bring us further, right? Together. Yeah.
And I think that signals also two things. Like one, that this is an important topic for you, right? And that signals also to the company. And secondly, that it's okay to not know it all. And like you also mentioned before, right? So we all are learning in this aspect, and it's developing so fast. So it's totally okay to not have all the answers and still share the learnings and interact with each other and figure out the limitations of those tools as well, because only that way we can reap the benefits.
And one thing is for sure, AI is not going to vanish.
I don't think so. I hope so. My job depends on it. That also is a topic.
Yeah, it's a topic, yeah. No, and I think the ways of working with AI, and that's also what you allude to here, is changing dramatically over the next years. So we need also a way of lightness, I would say, or easiness to deal with these changes in the future. No?
Yeah. I think that's a big thing, actually, because many times we got a bit focused on in my opinion, the wrong thing. I think you shouldn't focus on predicting the future, because we know that we are not good at this. Like, you can look into the past and look at predictions of all the experts you read the opinion pieces about right now and look at their past forecasts and everything. In most cases, they're not really good at predicting, and we are either. So what is the alternative? The alternative is being nimble, being adaptable, and really looking into what is working, what is not working right now, and adapting and positioning yourself to that which is real, and really being flexible. Like, that's so that you can adapt quickly to those changes. You don't have to predict them. You just have to be ready for them.
Right. So that is a great finish of our discussion here. However, I will not let you go without having one more question to you. What really makes you tick? What drives you? Especially when I listen to you, you have a lot of energy for topics. What is it?
What drives me, I think, is really taking these ambiguous and complex problems and really trying to deconstruct them, break them down, and solve them in creative ways so that there's a real impact. You see the results, and you see that your solution actually works, and you have these feedback loops. If there's like too long of abstract kind of discussions and everything around that, I get bored, to be honest. So it has to be tangible, and it has to be complex topics. If it's just formulaic, you're gonna lose me. So that's really the thing that drives me.
Right. Well, cool. Well, thank you really, Fabio, for not only being part of the G+D Netcetera team, but also of having this wonderful conversation here with me today. I appreciate it, really. Thank you.
It was great to be here.
And I hope you also liked our conversation on AI today in Future Proof. Like and subscribe, and please write your comments on your next step on driving organizational readiness for AI. Looking forward to see you again. Take care. Until then. Hello, Fabio.
Hello, Carsten.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good to see you. Hey, I'd like to record a podcast on AI. Would you join me?
Sure, let's do it.
Let's go.